Hey, this week I made IDW Mikey and I'm going to show you how I did it. So I have this bootleg Michelangelo that I got off Amazon, and then first step I want to sand down his cheeks, so I'm using my Dremel. And first I use sandpaper, then this is like a polishing stone, it just takes a little more off. Then I went to my nail file to kind of finish the job and get anything that's left. That's a microfiber cloth that I just used to wipe it down. Now I have some recently boiled water and softens up the plastic and the rubber of his belt, because I want to take his belt off. And while his chest is still warm, it's easier to make some marks in there with my scalpel. Now while that dries, I move on to making the nunchucks. So this is a skewer and I just marked it off, and then I scored it, and then I cut it with scissors, but I go around with the scissors to continue where I scored it before I cut down. And now I'm sanding just one side of each I need flat, and I'm marking in the center where I'm going to drill a hole with my handy hand drill, which is one of my favorite tools. All the stuff I'm using, including the figure, you can find Amazon links down below. Now you might get this, but it's a round plastic twist tie, and I just super glue that into the maybe 1.5 millimeter hole that I drilled. And then I decided his face still needs more sanding on the cheeks, so I did that, and then I marked off on his shell there so he has some grooves instead of just a straight flat crotch area. And then I move on to, this is another stone, but it's smaller so I could get in the round curved details, and then the nail file to finish the job. And I'm just sanding the whole thing a bit so that it takes the paint better. That's like a hard plastic, different than in the original toy. But now I cover everything with an acrylic matte varnish because that gets it ready for painting. It works as my primer, and I'm going over the whole shell with a sap green because I want to get a dark base for the shell, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's good if you don't drop it and get the paint all on your hands instead of the shell. And now I'm going all the details with the burnt umber on the plastron undershoot chest and in the cracks and details of the back shell and on his pads, and where some spots on his pads don't have any paint, so I got that with the burnt umber. Then I move on to a raw sienna. Now I'm dry brushing the raw sienna on the shell, and then I do the sides with the raw sienna as well. And I move on to a cinnamon brown, and I'm just going lightly over all the pads and the burnt umber spots, and now doing a light dry brush just on the edges of where the grooves of his shell are to help bring everything out more. I like to put a lot of colors on the shell and pick up all the details I can. And now I mix a white acrylic primer with a white acrylic to thicken it up a bit, and I'm painting his wraps. He's going to get more wraps later, and then I also paint over his eyes and his bandana. It was a bad orange on there, and it's going to pop out more since I did white underneath, and it's easier to do the eyes if it's all white on the inside, and then you put as much as you want. Now I mixed 2 greens and a turquoise there to get the color I wanted for his skin tone, and I start covering everywhere with that. It was Christmas green, a hunter green, and some turquoise that I got for that color. And I think it came pretty close to the comic book color. He's the darkest, and he's got a little tinge of blue, but it's still pretty green. There he is again. I put a picture, like a reference picture, in the middle of when I'm changing what I'm doing. It helps. Oh, I didn't mean to paint this part of his leg, but sometimes I get in the zone painting and I just look for anything I can paint before I put the color away. And now I'm on to, it's a pure pumpkin I'm using for the bandana. And then I was really careful to just get over the bandana, and then I remembered in the reference he's got more of a wider mask there, so I went out of the line just to add like it's a bigger piece of cloth. Now I'm gluing down his shells And my favorite part, this is when all the details really start to come out. I'm using a daffodil yellow. It's just kind of a muted yellow, and I'm going over all the edges and especially on the sides of the shell. That's where I start, so it gets the most paint and it picks up all the details. And because it's such a light yellow, it works everywhere pretty much as my highlights. It really brings out all the details in the shells now that I add this highlight coat, and even on the pads I can use it just because green and brown and yellow all kind of go together, so that worked out well. And now I'm back to the burnt umber. I just did a light coat on the nunchucks. I just spread it out as much as I can. I want to leave it kind of darker in some spots and lighter in some spots. That just adds some age without having to do anything else. This is an old shoe. I really like this shoe, and it didn't wear out on the outside. It still looked alright, but on the inside the insole was glued in, but beyond the insole the actual rubber sole had like a huge, like deep imprint of my foot, and it was causing me pain and issues, so I had to get rid of them. But I thought I liked the material, I can probably use it for something, so I use it for this belt. And well, all of their belts are gonna get the same leather from my shoe. It's not the end yet. It could have been, but to make the extra bands that I painted white just in case anything shows through, but now I'm wrapping with the hockey stick tape, and it's a fabric tape, so it's gonna do what I need it to do and look like fabric wraps and match with the plastic fabric wraps that are molded that I already painted white. So now I covered these with a lot of my matte varnish and I let it dry for like an hour because I want it to become more like plastic than actual fabric. And then I do another coat of the white, and now I'm painting the white tape with the same white that I'm painting and have already painted the rest of them with, just so everything blends together and it looks like one piece instead of a piece of fabric tape and then plastic that it already was. Because this leather material is thicker, I make the pouches just by having a strip and then gluing it, like folding it once and then leaving enough to fold the flap over. And then on some of them I put a little, I don't know, a strap that holds it shut, because he has them in the comic book. But I like the look of it without. Now the piece that I put to hold his nunchucks, I trim that a bit so it fits better with the belt. Now I do another coat of the matte varnish over all the places I just painted, and it's still not done yet. This is a brown wash. I add some orange. It was burnt umber, a drop of black, and then orange because I wanted it lighter and brighter. And then I just put a bunch on and then wipe it as much as you can kind of off, but it'll stay more in the cracks and the details and make everything pop out more, because he's got some brownish dirty wraps on in some of the pictures. Different artists draw the wraps and stuff different, but that's what I was going off of. And so thanks a lot for sticking with me. Next week I'm going to do Jenica, and until then, remember, always keep your head up. Peace.